The New York City Commission on Human Rights does not provide legal advice. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the individuals and do not necessarily reflect the views or position of the Commission. Enjoy the show.
Hello, New York City. Welcome to another episode of Rights Here, Right Now, from the New York City Commission on Human Rights. I'm your host, Jose Rios Lua. Pronouns are he, him, Chief of Staff at the Commission. Rights Here, Right Now airs on the last Monday of every month on WHCR 90.3 FM. Each episode will give listeners the info they'll need to live, work, and thrive free from discrimination in our city. All episodes will also be posted on the Commission's website, YouTube channel, and now you can find past episodes on Spotify.
And I'm your co-host, JoAnn Kamuf, Deputy Commissioner of Policy and External Affairs. And my pronouns are she, her. It's great to be back.
I know we had to skip May because of the holiday, so it's good to be back in studio with you, JoAnn. And we have a guest with us today. Today is the last day of June, which is the last day of Pride Month. So today's episode is the Pride episode. And before we jump in, we're going to play a short audio about the protections for LGBTQI New Yorkers in our city.
The New York City Commission on Human Rights takes pride in cultivating an inclusive city where everyone is welcome. It is illegal to treat someone differently because they're a member of the LGBTQIA+ community. Our city's human rights law protects New Yorkers from discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Violations of the city's human rights law protections include employers with dress codes or grooming standards that deny a person's gender identity or gender expression, or landlords that refuse to lease a unit, charge higher rent, or won't provide repairs to a tenant because of their LGBTQIA+ identity. No one should have to worry about discrimination in their home, on the job, or in public spaces. To learn more or report a violation, visit nyc.gov/livewithpridenyc or call 212-416-0197.
Well, today we are honored, as I was saying, to have a guest, and joining us is Tabytha Gonzalez, a powerful voice in New York City's movements for trans rights and racial justice. Not only do we have the honor of having Tabytha here today, but we have the honor of working with Tabytha every single day because Tabytha also serves with us in the Commission on Human Rights as an associate human rights specialist, and our trans communities liaison. So thank you so much, Tabytha, for being here. We're so excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been an interesting moment this year. So what keeps you going? What's
been fueling me lately is the deep sense of urgency and love. You know, we're living in a time where our basic rights are under attack, but also where our communities are rising up with incredible creativity and resistance. I'm inspired by the young people, by the elders, and those who have been forgotten and written off. My work is fueled by the refusal to let our stories be erased and a commitment to building something better. We're committed to that, something rooted in care, dignity, and truth.
We've been talking a lot this year about erasure because even though it's been happening for a while, it seems like it's been an overdrive this year. And it just seems silly to me because it's like trans people have always existed, gender non-conforming people have always existed. And so I just say that to say the work that you do both inside the commission and outside is not just appreciated, but needed more than ever.
Thank you.
So Pride Month is about visibility and justice, but also about reflections and resilience. What does Pride mean to you this year? And how do you hold space for both joy and ongoing fight for equality?
Pride for me is a protest. It's always been a protest. It feels like both a celebration and a protest. It's about remembering the legacy of Marsha and Sylvia, so many unnamed icons and heroes and freedom fighters. You know, it's about protecting our rights to joy. For me, joy is resistance. It is a radical act of resistance. Holding space for that means like showing up fully, grieving our losses, naming the injustices, and still dancing and still laughing and loving out loud. That's how we are going to survive, and that is how we're going to win. We have to remember that we are a community that we didn't ask for resiliency. We didn't ask to have a pride. We'd asked to be treated with dignity and respect. And if that constitutes pride, I'm so proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish over the years.
One of the things you just said really resonates to me. In Spanish, though, the word for a protest is more closely translated to the word demonstration. Mm-hmm. It's not just like a celebration. You're right. It is a protest as well. It is a demonstration of our struggle, our fight, our resilience, that we're still here.
And there's ongoing demonstrations. Like, I love the girls who are out there radically moving the needle forward towards liberation, you know. And I always take an opportunity whenever I'm speaking publicly to like name some of those girls who are influencing and shaping the work that we do, like Hope Giselle, like Queen Jean, you know, like the work of the late great Cecilia Gentili, and so many others who have done this work. And I'm so proud and honored to say, like, these are the people that I feel trusted around, you know, because it's one thing to be a face, but it's also to have that community trust. So, you know, to be trusted and to know that these women are out there, like our former associate human rights specialist now, Chanel Lopez, who's up in the working for Governor Kathy Hochul. Like, these are amazing accomplishments.
And I think in just the response you just gave, you were doing some storytelling. So how have you used storytelling, Tabytha, as a tool in your advocacy work?
Storytelling is at the heart of everything. Like, when we talk about erasing histories and doing stuff like that, I want to be clear. Like, I didn't get our history or queer history from books, because we weren't written about, especially Black and brown stories, right? I didn't get it from some classroom. I learned the culture and my history under the elbows of my grandmothers on Sundays, cooking in the kitchen, where you get all the juicy stories about how resilient we are as a community. I started to learn and hear about my community from many other elders in community. So storytelling is the way that we're going to survive this, right? We have to continue to teach the new generation about what we've been through, and not only what we've been through, but what we've accomplished, right? I do storytelling, whether it's through public speaking, when I'm given the opportunity to work on documentaries and tell my story, or just sitting down, like I said, at grandma's table, just sharing stories in our history. This is how we reclaim our power when we tell our stories, especially when our experience have been so misrepresented in media and at times silenced. I've used storytelling to honor those who came before me, to those that I want to uplift, and those who are still fighting, and those who are building bridges between communities that don't always see us. Our stories are evidence. Our stories are testimonies. Our stories are prophecy.
So Tabytha, so much of LGBTQ history has been shaped by people at the intersection of race, gender, identity, and class. We're never just one thing, right? Why is it important to you that those voices and contributions are heard and, you know, remembered?
Because we built this. Like, plain and simple.
Yeah.
I was talking earlier and I was saying how our culture, you know, like our history and our culture, we don't take culture. You never see us duplicating someone else. We are able to create culture and create and birth resistance. Black and brown women and trans women, right? And I want to be clear, because I heard one of my sisters say it before, that I'm a woman. Trans is just a descriptor of the type of woman that I am. So Black and brown trans women built this movement. Working class queer folks built this movement. People who were criminalized just for who they are, who didn't have institutions backing them, who had nothing but each other. And that's what made Pride possible, right? We came together for a common goal. We don't honor the intersections all the time. We erase the truth for our liberation. So it's important that we continue to raise our voices so that people would know. Like, you know, there's so many different people who want to take credit or create this will of liberation for themselves and forget about the trans people. And we have been here fighting for everyone else's cause. And it's time that I see that, you know, our accomplices and our allies do the same for us. Remembering and centering those voices isn't optional. It's justice.
There's something that you've said at a recent demonstration that has stuck with me this entire time. There was a press conference at Stonewall earlier this year, and for anybody who wants to know what I'm talking about, you can go back to our Instagram and see the clip from Tabytha at NYCCHR. There is a clip where you talk about, for those who have supported us and you call it specific communities, you said, where is your righteous indignation?
Mm-hmm.
And I think here is something that is not plainly said to people enough, where when it comes to issues of human rights, the trans community constantly shows up for people, whether they are trans issues, for those, I'm using air quotes, trans issues, or just human rights issues. And so calling out our multiple communities who are supported by the trans community, it's important that when issues come that are quote unquote trans issues, other folks have to show their righteous indignation and show up and be in solidarity and make space, right?
I mean, it's the truth, right? Because right now there's so many laws and so many attacks on the trans community, but I promise you it's not trans people who are separating families. I promise you it is not trans people that is raising the cost of rent. I promise you that it is not trans people that are causing these issues that they're making us out to be. When we talk about gender affirming care for children, it's not mutilating children. It's giving children the affirming households to make decisions with their families and a doctor who will help these kids understand what's going on. I wish as a child that I had access to gender affirming care and an affirming family who knew how to care for someone like me. Gender affirming care doesn't mutilate people. It gives them an option to be full grown, decent human beings.
On a recent TV show interview, Laverne Cox had said, I can tell you exactly what the trans agenda is right now. And the trans agenda is just, we want to live our lives.
That's it.
And so I can even take it a little step forward. Something you just said, like, just to paraphrase what you just said, like, we just want spaces where children feel loved for who they are.
That's it.
Like, that's how you summarize the entire thing. People should feel safe to be who they are, feel loved or welcomed for who they are. And then wouldn't the world be so much better?
It would be. And I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead because that's why it's important when we're not being able to be celebrated or treated with it. We begin to create our own spaces, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've gone off script too long, so I'm going to let JoAnn go for a second.
Well, I was going to go off on the gender affirming care that happens every day for cis people.
It does. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. Let's not even talk about
this is my favorite topic.
Botox.
So I think
Rogaine.
Yeah.
Just like the deep hypocrisy that we're seeing just surface so much, and people not identifying in their own lives what they're okay with, but placing shade and shame on others for doing something that they would do in a second for themselves or their children. I think
our bodies are not political fodder. Like we should have authentic, agency over our own bodies and the autonomy to make decisions that correctly align with who we are.
And I think so much of what we've just been talking about in this episode, but I think historically, is also about the importance of space to come together, right? Community spaces where you feel safe and like you can be your full self. These spaces are under attack, right? We've seen already since yesterday lots of misinformation about the Pride Parade, a collective space where people are coming together to both protest and celebrate. What kinds of spaces or platforms have you seen making a difference for queer and trans New Yorkers?
Well, honestly, it's the spaces that are created by us and for us. Those are the ones that's making the biggest impact in grassroots community centers, mutual aid groups, trans-led organizations, spaces that cater and serve trans people. For me, most importantly, ballroom, house and ballroom culture, and healing collectives. These are the spaces where we're not just safe, we're also celebrated. They're not always funded or visible, but they are powerful, and they're saving lives every day.
The message there is find your people and be
people,
with them.
Find your community. And for those who are looking to support, fund trans-led organizations who are doing the work. Fund house and ballroom community where our children can explore and express themselves and be celebrated for it.
Tabytha, you're addressing daily discrimination, right? People that you're talking to through your work at the commission, but I think really big picture thinking about how to challenge systemic inequality. What are some of the biggest barriers you think that are facing trans and gender nonconforming New Yorkers today? And maybe to balance that a little bit, where have you seen some progress?
The biggest barriers are structural: lack of stable housing, employment discrimination, criminalization of who you are, sex work, the lack of access to affirming health care. We're still being policed for existing. But I've seen progress in how we're organizing, like trans people leading campaigns that help influences and change minds on how we're being viewed and how we're being presented in media, winning policy changes, like there are trans people who are collectively moving in Albany and in spaces to help shape policies that protect us. And we're showing up for each other in transformative ways that I've never seen before. So this gives me hope.
I'm going to put the spotlight on you a little bit, because I think you also give hope to the community as well, to see someone who's part of community in your role, to have the backing of their local government, right? To say those things. And even when you're in spaces representing the city and saying the thing that might feel uncomfortable to say, right? Saying the thing that is the truth that the community is actually facing. I think that's also really inspiring. And you mentioned Chanel, who is your predecessor and who's now at the governor's office. What has kind of occupying this space and this role been for you in that vein?
It has helped me inspire others to know that, there is some levels of access and civic engagement that we need to definitely be a part of, right? For so long, the system has beat us down and made us feel like, they're not listening, like our voices don't matter and nothing is going to work, right? And people are system fatigued. It's a real thing, right? Yeah. So being able to be that representation, to speak and shape policies, to be in the rooms, to say those things is something that I value and something that is needed. The goal is to encourage more to be able to show up in those spaces where policies are being discussed, where funding is being discussed, where opportunities for growth and development in the private business sector and in just local government agencies. It would be so much better to see our communities in those spaces. And to be clear, not just for roles that are descriptive to LGBTQ, but showing up to do a job that you have the skill set to do, to be a part of the workforce environment, to be a part of civic engagement, to make sure that we're protected in our communities. So this is important. So this work that I do is a great responsibility, one that I am proud of, one that I know that I have earned the right to be here. Also, like being trusted in the city, in the state, and also, most importantly, being trusted by community, because there is such a mistrust of government and community. So being able to toe that line, I wear that with a badge, that I know that I've accomplished things that if you would have told me this 12 years ago, I would have never believed it.
There's something that I see you do all the time when I get to see you in community, and I don't know that many civil servants have really absorbed this. That part of being a trusted member of community, when you come to this side, right, to the government side of it, is being able to deliver the news how it is, even when it's bad news, and not just telling people what you think they want to hear.
No.
I've seen you in moments where you'd be like, listen, sis, like, this is not what you want, but this is what it is, right? And so I'm going to share with you how it is, even though it's putting you in an uncomfortable position to have that conversation with someone. But then I also feel like you walk away and you're like, for my reputation, I got to tell them the truth. I can't just tell them what they think they want to hear.
It's important, right? Because there's already a mistrust, right? Lack of transparency and authentic conversations is what causes harm. Like to be able to be in the rooms with other city agencies and interagencies is not only call it out in there, but say, hey, this isn't going to work, but also to go back to community and say, hey, this is what we can do. This is what we can do. And I know this is not the desired answer that you are looking for, but I want to manage your expectations. I want to encourage you. This is why you should be involved. You should make sure that we can get this done. I need you. And I tell people this all the time. We have to be in every space. There's room for radical activism. There's room for conversation and policy. There is space for all of that. And we need to be able to move in those spaces to make sure that our voices are not only seen, as a soundbite or a picture, for someone, but also to be heard, to be listened, to be represented. So it's so important. And I think for me, that's why my community trusts me, because they know Auntie Taby is going to tell the truth.
Exactly. And like even for people who don't like eat, sleep, and breathe anti-discrimination like we do at the commission, our work can be confusing and difficult to understand, right? And you're like, I've obviously been through something bad, but is it discrimination? And people need someone who's going to walk them through them and say, hey, listen, this can be, and I need you to call the law enforcement bureau,
right?
And then say, what you went through is horrible, but it's not actually enforceable.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a lot of disconnect. Like, there are things that determine and constitute what is discrimination. And I think because people don't have a clear indicator, like anytime something happens, I'm discriminated against, that may not necessarily constitute discrimination, but let's explore that. And let me tell you what it is, which is why I'm so happy that we'll be rolling out a new training in July, specifically for TGNC MB New Yorkers, so they will fully understand the process and know what actually constitutes discrimination.
Yeah, I was just going to build on that to say, yes, there is lots of discriminatory things that happen to people. Whether it's legally discrimination that we can act upon is different. And I think that's really hard to hear when you know you've been wronged and you can feel it. And we can't always act on things that are not in the law. And that, I think, is a really tough place to be.
And speaking to New Yorkers listening to this, even when it's not actionable by law, we still want to hear about it because it also informs your work, right?
Yes.
It informs the work of like, well, this is where I need to go to tell people about the rights of trans New Yorkers. And
And that's the kind of systemic piece, I think, too, right? Like if you look back at our law 50 years ago, we did not have the protected classes we have today. And so as things change and we gather information, more things can fit into that definition of what is illegal, but also what constitutes systemic discrimination that we want to keep fighting to address.
So, Tabytha, while we've seen harmful rollbacks at the federal level, our work at the Commission is also to ensure that New Yorkers know and can exercise their rights under the New York City Human Rights Law. From your perspective, what more can institutions do to make sure people feel seen, safe, and empowered?
Honestly, like we've been saying this for so long, I tell people all the time, there's no special formula.
Yeah.
There is no concoction that we can create and say, here is, it's very simple. It's very simple, I promise you. Start by listening. Truly listen to trans people, and not just the most palatable ones or the visible ones, but those who are also more impacted. Institution needs to back up the words with resources, fund trans-led organizations, train staff, create mechanisms for accountability, and shift power. Safety and empowerment aren't just about policy. You know, it's about culture. It's about how we protect who we are. We need systems that don't just include us, because everybody wants to be inclusive. And they say, oh, how do you be inclusive? Hire us. It's really simple. But are built with us at the center. So don't just talk about us without having us in the room. Don't just build it without us being the architects of how that goes out. And don't put barriers in front of us that makes it impossible for us to take care of our community. Fund the trans-led organizations, release the funding to them so they can do the work that is sustainable. There are so many people out there doing amazing work, like Sean Coleman over at Destination Tomorrow, like Alex Roque over at Ali Forney Center, the New Pride Agenda, the Empowerment Center, Trans Latina, Make the Road. There are so many agencies who are doing this work on the ground daily, who need access to this funding. And these are predominantly trans-led spaces who need this vital funding. Black Trans Liberation Kitchen, they feed people continuously, and that is a basic need. People are having to determine how they're going to eat, and there are agency and people who are willing to do it to feed them. Where's the support?
It's so interesting to really put it in perspective. How can you expect somebody to understand their rights and talk about their liberation when they haven't had a meal in days, right? And so it's really frustrating to be in our positions in our work because of the nature of the work. We want to be able to do everything that needs to be done to support community. And then you come to the realization that there's limitations to what people can do within government, right? Mm-hmm. We can't do everything. And so the things that you're talking about, those partnerships are what make our community relations work so important. Yes. Because when, I got to go to the New Pride Agenda because you invited me to an event on those places and I got to speak. And what was most important to me is while they do social work and casework and all those pieces, you walk in and the first thing you see is their pantry. Yes. Because the first thing they do is they say, have you eaten? In order to support someone through their liberation, right? Mm-hmm. You got to feed them first.
You got to take care of their basic needs. Yes. And to your point, that is why it's so important as a community relationship bureau that we strengthen our community relationships, attachments, and, continue to build on those. And it's so important because there are things that we won't be able to do. But if I know and I can say, hey, I know a place, I can send you here. This is what I can do. But I can also send you here. They can do this, and if you need this, it's about having that resource information readily accessible. And that's one great thing that I will say, that since my experience being here, that we've been able to get people to spaces where they really can get the most impactful help when we are unable to move past like litigation or just get their basic needs met for that moment. These relationships that we have with CBOs and community-based organizations are so important and critical to the work that we do.
We want New Yorkers to know that gender identity and gender expression are protected in housing, employment, and public accommodations, and that includes protections from harassment, misgendering, or being denied access to public facilities. Folks, if you want to learn more, what do we always say? Go to our website.
That's nyc.gov/human rights.
We are an agency that upholds human rights law, and the law is always changing, which makes our work so critical to make sure that we're continuing to enforce laws and policies that protect us and making sure that our community is aware of it. So that's the importance of this role as well.
We talked a little bit about that word visibility. There is a cost that comes with visibility.
Visibility does cost, right? And it can be in so many different ways. It's not like, okay, you're visible, you have this assumed privilege because you're visible. That is not always the case. Yeah. People will always stop and be like, oh my God, I saw the stroll. I'm so inspired by you. Oh my God, you're so strong and resilient. I'm like, I never asked to be strong and resilient. I never asked for those things. I asked to be treated with dignity and respect, for you to treat me with human decency. And visibility comes at the cost of people being upset because you're becoming more visible. It comes with sleepless nights of figuring out what you're going to say, what you're going to do, how you're able to be in spaces. Like, I don't want to have to continue to perform for people to be okay with giving my community access. It can be very draining on those who we feel as though are super visible. We're not visible because we choose to be. We have no choice. This is what we have to do because not everyone will feel okay raising their voices. I always tell people, there are so many people who be like, oh, I want the mic. That mic could literally cost you your life. There are trans leaders who have been doxxed, people who have been profiled. Like, being visible comes at a cost. And sometimes that can impact your family. It impacts your self-confidence and impacts you and financially, especially when they want you to show up and you're paying to get there. And then they thank you for coming, and we enjoyed your trauma porn, and thank you so much, and you can go home after. But what happens to the person after that is also equally important. It's treating them like you would treat any other person who you're coming to get IP from or to share information with, right? I am visible. I'm visible because I refuse to be pushed back to the margins and watch another community be disemboweled by this political climate. I refuse to let these babies and other queer people who are behind me, I am not a young girl. Like, I lived. So when I see these little black and brown babies standing in their self-assured identity, knowing who they are, that's the impact of visibility. Visibility without purpose will cause harm. Your visibility has to come with an intention. And if the intentions is about you, then you're in the wrong line of business and you're doing the wrong thing. It must be rooted in care. It must be rooted in liberation, and that's the real work.
What do you do for yourself to keep yourself going? How do you advise folks that you're working with or mentoring to take care of themselves? And what do you do for self-care?
I think for me, what keeps me going is like my family, my chosen family, my husband, and the children in my house, and my community. I find rest at times when I'm sitting down and I'm watching them have fun, because rest is also a form of radical activation. Sometimes you just need a rest. I find that when I'm able to travel with my family, one of the greatest trips I had in rest and self-care was going to Hawaii. And me and my sister had this thing we would say whenever we would start to feel anxious. We would breathe and say, I'm good. And there were times throughout, like we would open our phone because it was a trip where we wasn't going to look at the news. We weren't going to do any of that stuff. We were out there to disconnect. And that's what self-care is, the ability to disconnect, but know that your children are equipped with the tools that they need to survive, so then you can rest. And I would be remiss, like one of the ways that I find care again is by my chosen family and my children. When I'm with my sisters and we're talking and I'm with my pop and he's pouring into me, is finding that close circle that's going to pour into you. I'm so grateful for my sisters, and two of them I want to say, y'all know I always say Dominique. And I always do this, y'all, so for the listeners, I name drop because it's important to bring names in the room. So I just want to say Lala Zanel, Elisa Crespo, Chanel Lopez, Dominique Jackson, Asia Snowden, Chastity Moore, Simone Carter. I love y'all so much. And my dad, Sean. Thank you. Thank you for putting up with all my craziness.
JoAnn, it seemed like you were about to jump in.
Oh, I was reflecting on how I used to think like the weekend, how much stuff am I doing? Like, okay, I did this, and then I went and did this, and then I went and now I'm like, if I spend a couple hours just hanging out with my family, exactly as you're saying, I'm like, oh, I feel better. And I did not used to make space for that, and I think it's super important.
It's so important.
One of the reasons why I asked the price to visibility is even on the micro level, right? When someone goes living their life and the people around them may not know that they are trans, there is a cost for people knowing that the person is trans, right?
People do not feel safe. And this notion of passable privilege or being able to be palatable to, mainstream media and stuff like that. I think about two of my nieces, Raquel Willis and Lena Bloom. They're very beautiful women, but that's something that they're okay with. Sometimes you think because they're a beautiful woman, they're safe. It can potentially cause more harm if someone is not able to regulate emotions after determining that you're trans or after you disclose that you're trans, because you can tell them there's this whole notion of they're fooling people. No, we're not. And it's at times when we tell them that we're even placed in more harm. So not everyone feels safe coming out as trans. There are children who are in school questioning their identity because they don't feel safe coming at home. So to any listener who may be struggling with your identity, do what feels safe for you.
And to any listener wondering, well, what can the commission do for me? I have a clip that we're going to play from one of our recent settlements.
Cool. Listen in.
The Commission on Human Rights is responsible for enforcing New York City's anti-discrimination law,
which is one of the broadest and most expansive anti-discrimination laws in the country. So anyone who lives, works, or even visits the city is protected from discrimination under the law.
It's really important to uplift that transgender people in New York City and gender non-conforming people face discrimination in almost all facets of life.
Mr. Bonifacio came to us because he experienced two really serious incidents of discrimination. The first one occurred when he confided in a caseworker that he was transgender.
I was basically made to feel less than. The exact words were, I was a liability. And all I did was indirectly out myself because of a question asked.
The worker responded by immediately telling Mr. Bonifacio that he was a liability and moving him from the hotel where he was staying, where he was fairly comfortable, to a much more institutionalized and less desirable shelter, where he felt so unsafe that he actually left within a period of days.
There's nothing wrong with being trans. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with what I did and, having to out myself. This was all the irresponsibility of that agency.
The second incident occurred when he was interacting with officers who repeatedly and intentionally misgendered him in front of other people.
If someone misgenders you or outs you, that's harassment. You're compromising my safety, you're outing me, you're outing my trans status. My gender assigned at birth is medical information. So I had to go to commission after that.
When a member of the public files a complaint of discrimination, the commission's first job is to look into things and get to the bottom of what happened.
The Law Enforcement Bureau found probable cause in favor of Mr. Bonifacio and then settled the case for emotional distress damages for Mr. Bonifacio.
And then we also reached an agreement for the respondents to change their policies and practices to reduce the likelihood that other people would experience discrimination.
When it comes to the commission helping people overcome these cases of discrimination, they're basically helping these people overcome an obstacle that shouldn't exist in the first place.
I think it's so important that a government entity is right here in New York City is taking a stand and saying, we will defend you. We have your backs.
The Commission on Human Rights doesn't just prosecute cases that start with a member of the public filing the complaint.
It's important for the commission to be out in the community and hearing from the community. Individuals aren't always at a place where they can step forward and be a named complainant. And we then can step into their shoes and be the complainant and make sure that rights are being enforced without putting an individual in that vulnerable position of having to say, yes, I was discriminated against.
I hope that transgender New Yorkers who face discrimination will call the Commission on Human Rights and will know that we can stand with you in getting relief, in saying this is not acceptable, and that the Commission can be here to help you fight back.
So for those who are hearing that, I just want to make one point very clear from that clip. When you report something to us, you don't have to identify. You can make reports anonymously because not everyone is safe to make a complaint and be named. And we know that, and we want to be there for you regardless. Tabytha, I appreciate every time you show up into these spaces because you show up authentic, real, truth, not only representing yourself with grace, but the community as well. So I just want to thank you for joining us and for doing this work with us every single day.
Thank you. Do I have time for a message to the
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Always.
Okay, so if you're under the sound of my voice and you are someone who is questioning or you're trans-identified, just know that you're not alone, even when it feels like no one sees you. You are deeply needed. You belong. Your existence is powerful. Your voice matters. There are communities ready to hold you, to fight for you, and to remind you that you deserve joy, safety, and love. Keep going. We got you because you are loved, you are valued, and your life matters. We got you.
Thank you so much, Tabytha, again, for joining us. And for those listening, you want to learn more about the Commission on Human Rights, you can follow us on social media at NYCCHR for those exciting updates, resources, and community events. Remember that we all must work together to create a city where New Yorkers can live, work, and thrive, free from discrimination. Join us next month for a conversation on protections for the disability community. Until then, this has been another episode of Rights Here, Right Now, your guide to human rights in New York City.
Stay cool.